Does prayer even work? Hi, I'm Mike Mason. This is the Immortal Combat Podcast. The Immortal Combat Podcast is the podcast arm of Viri Christi. Viri Christi is a Catholic lay apostolate devoted to help young men attain the full stature of Christ by growing strong in mind, body, and spirit. If you'd like to learn more about our work, you can check us out online at virichristi.com. This is episode 12 of the Rule of Life series that we've been working through. In this Rule of Life series, we're looking at what it means to be strong in body, mind, and spirit. So here we are in month 3, second to last episode of this series. And today we're going to talk about, does prayer work? Okay. Fancy term for this is we're going to talk about the efficacy of prayer. So last week we looked at the difference between vocal and mental prayer. Keep in mind, fellas, vocal prayer, prayers you say with out loud, you just public or private. And mental prayers are things you say in your mind when your mind and heart and affections are raised up to God. And we, gave you a couple strategies on how to practice both of those a little bit better. This, we're going to talk about the efficacy of prayer. Efficacy of prayer is a fancy word that just means this. It refers to the fact that prayer can produce a certain desired or intended result. So basically, does prayer do anything? So when you pray, does it do anything for God? All right. Short answer is yes. So let's look at a couple passages from Jesus. Luke chapter 11, 9 through 10. Jesus says this, "And I tell you, ask and it will be given you. Seek and you'll find. Knock and it'll be open to you. For everyone who receives and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks, it will be open." Okay. In this passage, it's very clear. Jesus is connecting asking with receiving, seeking and finding, knocking and door being open. So that connection means that our seeking actually does something. In John 16, 23 through 24, Jesus says, truly, truly, I say to you, if you ask anything of the Father, he will give it to you in my name. Okay. Ask and you will receive that your joy may be full. That's John 16. Notice in this passage, Jesus very clearly is saying that he will answer our prayers. Okay. Now, what causes our prayers to be answered? Is it us or is it God? Because a lot of people might say, well, I'm the one who does stuff. Like I ask and God answers because he owes it to me or something like that. One of my favorite authors, Reginald Garrigou-Lagrange, which is a great name, he says this: prayer is not a weak force with its first principle in us. The source of its efficacy is in God and the infinite merits of Jesus Christ. What's that mean? Guys, what causes our prayers to work is not in us. It's not dependent on us. So don't think when your prayers work, God's like, oh, I owe it to, John Smith over there because he asked. And John Smith's such a great dude. That's not how this works. No, the efficacy or the reason why prayer works is because God is the source of that. Garrigou-Lagrange goes on and says, the efficacy of prayer descends from an eternal decree, springs from redeeming love, and reascends to divine mercy. So what he's saying is God is the reason why our prayers work. Now, comes a problem. This comes up in my class when I teach. I teach high school, as you guys know. This comes up in my class. Guys will look at me and say, wait. This doesn't make any sense. If God's going to do what he's going to do anyways, why does prayer make any sort of difference? Okay. That's a good question. And Garrigou-Lagrange in here kind of hints at it because he says God's answer comes from an eternal decree. Well, guys, if it comes from an eternal decree, that means from all eternity, God was going to do what he's going to do. So what's it matter what I do? All right, let's answer that first briefly. Here's 2 errors you can fall into. Okay. One error is the error of the skeptic. The skeptic says, my prayers are irrelevant. God's going to do whatever he's going to do, whatever. It's a waste of time to pray. That's a huge error. Don't fall into that error. Okay. The second error you can fall into is a lot of Catholics think that God, God was going to do one thing and then I prayed and then he changed his mind because, I said so. That's an error too, because that puts like the efficacy of prayer on us. Okay. So you guys see the errors. One error is prayer doesn't do anything. God's going to do whatever. Or the other error is I can change God's mind about stuff. Those are errors. The truth of the matter is in the middle, so to speak. Okay. Both of those errors have a grain of truth in them, but the truth is more profound. Okay. Can you change God's mind? No. God is eternal. God is infinite. God is unchanging. We do not change him from the outside. So when we pray, it's not like we move or change God. So it seems like the skeptic's correct. Okay, so I just rebutted the Catholic sitting in the pews. Okay, we don't change God. But it seems like the skeptic's saying, see, I told you, our prayers don't do anything. That's not true either. Guys, when God from all eternity decides what he's going to do, he doesn't say, okay, I'm going to do this thing, and what comes before it is irrelevant. He doesn't do that. Okay. God doesn't, I'll use an analogy. God doesn't say, there's going to be corn in this field, and then it's irrelevant whether you put seeds in the ground or not. Like, no, putting seeds in the ground is relevant, because putting the seed in the ground and the rain that falls on it and the fertilizer you put on it brings about the crop. Those things that came before are not irrelevant. So even though if God's like, I'm going to grow corn in that field, it still matters that the seed's put in. So when God wills to grow corn, he wills the corn, the rain, and the seed all together. Okay, does that make sense? So the end, the corn, and the means, the water and seeds and all that stuff, he does the whole thing. Guys, this is how prayer works. God does decide from all eternity things he's going to do. Okay, so if your loved one in 10 years is going to be healed from a disease, God does will from all eternity that's going to happen. So the skeptic goes, well, it's irrelevant, I pray. False. Because when God willed that off from all eternity, he might decide to use your prayers to actually bring about that healing. He wills both of them. So when you pray, it's not irrelevant. When you pray, God is drawing you up into his eternal choice, and he's using your prayer to bring about his will. Your will and his will become one. And guys, this leads us into why prayer is so ridiculously important. It's so important because when we pray, fellas, God draws us up into his will. We participate in it. And our prayers really do something. So your free prayers, okay, when God answers them, they're really doing something. And what do? Okay, they bring about his will from all eternity, and we can freely choose to participate in it. Guys, when we pray, there's 3 effects that take place. First, when you pray, God's going to draw you up to himself. What that happens is it detaches you from other things underneath, like sin, temptation, or even good stuff. When you guys are getting up early in the morning to pray those prayers we've been challenging you to pray, that morning offering, and you're real tired and you're like getting up 10 minutes earlier than you wanted, that detaches you from good things like sleep. So when we pray, it detaches us from things of this world so that we can be united to God. It's first thing. Second, guys, prayer makes our union with God more complete and more perfect. Okay, so when God draws you up into his will to participate in it, he's drawing your mind up, your imagination, your memories, your emotions, your passions, even your body in some sense, right? God's drawing you up into himself and building that stuff, making you more perfect in his image. He's also giving you, prayer is an act of faith. He's growing faith in you. Prayer is sustained by hope. Hope's growing in you. Prayer's animated by love of God's. That's being drawn up. Okay, so as you are drawn into God's will, you're detached from creatures. Your union with God's being more perfect. And then gradually your soul is transformed into God. Guys, remember we talked about a couple weeks ago. When you pray, you worship God and you offer your petitions. Guys, when we're worshiping God, that adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, when we're offering our petitions to God, that supplication, right? Acts. When we offer that to him, rise up to him, he stoops down and gives us the grace to unite us. Super cool stuff, man. So guys, never, ever, ever let someone tell you that prayer is irrelevant. Don't let somebody tell you prayer is irrelevant, doesn't make any difference, it's a waste of time. That's false. Also, don't fall in the air to be like, God has to answer to me and what I ask him, and I can change God's mind. That's not true too. The truth is much more profound. From all eternity, God has willed the ends and means together, what he's going to do and the way he's going to do it. And he's calling you to draw you up into that eternal decree so that you can participate in his will with him. And as you do that, you're going to become more like him. Just super sweet stuff. So, as a heady episode today, guys, but I hope that was encouraging to you. Stay with those daily prayers. Keep at them. If you miss them, no big deal, man. Pick up the next day and keep going. And if you be diligent to it, God's going to give you the grace to start completing them and to become more like his son, Jesus Christ. So I think we'll stop there. God bless you, fellas. Look forward to talking to you next week.